Well, hello and welcome into Off the Bench here on a Wednesday. We got a great 2 hours lined up for you. Stone Shield show coming up at 11 o'clock. You'll have Chris Welsh on the show. I'll have Paul Fritzner at 10:20 today to come on the show. We're also going to do a little buy or sell after Paul comes on. Lots to talk about when it comes to college hoops. The Red Hawks still undefeated, even though they're not ranked. What's it going to look like to get them an at-large bid, if that's even possible? And then, of course, the Wes Miller soundbite from yesterday, and we'll have some takes on that here in just a few moments. John Harbaugh got fired as the Baltimore Ravens head coach, and if you've been watching this show long enough, you know that I've been hammering that if that comes available, if that becomes an option, the Bengals should throw a big wad of cash, which is always in the Bengals' nature to throw a big wad of cash at a problem to solve that. But we know that's not going to happen. Also, we know that Zach Taylor's going to be here, and so said our owner just a few days ago. Reed Mouster along here with Stone Shield. Stone! It's been a long time since we talked. Last time we talked was about Cam Taylor-Britt going to jail for 5 days. That's how we're going to break off the show. How are you on this lovely Wednesday?
I'm doing great. I'm doing a lot better than Cam Taylor-Britt, that's for sure. So got a loaded show. Paulie on the show. Looking forward to that. Always great insight from him. So, yeah, we're fired up, ready to go here on a Wednesday.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we'll start it off. I mean, we did a live show yesterday talking about Cam Taylor-Britt going to jail for 5 days. A few more details have come out that this was his second reckless driving incident, and that would make sense as to why his license was suspended, and he's going to be in jail for 5 days. And, you know, we can dissect it into, like, how does it make sense that this incident happened 3 months ago and it just so happens that he goes to jail the Tuesday right after the season ends? How does that make sense legally? It doesn't feel like justice should wait for the NFL schedule, but neither here nor there. The big question revolves around, what does this do to Cam Taylor-Britt's markets? Cam Taylor-Britt, according to Sport Track, was slated to be the top free agent in terms of AAV this offseason for cornerback. $15 million is what Sport Track had him guesstimated he was going to get this offseason. And I think at the output that we've seen from Cam Taylor-Britt, the output that we've seen from Juan Drago Turner and Dax Hill over the past few years, you feel pretty comfortable from what they were able to do in the second half of the year at cornerback, to where you don't necessarily need Cam Taylor-Britt. And $15 million, that seemed like a price tag too tall for someone that we haven't seen enough of over the last year and a half. But the question is what does this do to his market? If this drastically, and I don't know if it does, I think throughout the history of the National Football League, we've seen that it's not a deal breaker if you go to jail. But what does this do to a guy's market, to where he was guessed to get $15 million? What happens if it's in the single digits of millions of dollars? What if it's $7 million AAV? Is that something that can tickle the Bengals fancy? Is that something where, you know, he knows the system, he's getting along, he's had some bright spots here in Cincinnati, he's had some really good tape. Do we feel confident to bring him back? And I'll just say this openly and transparently, I think his market would have to come way the heck down. I didn't want Cam Taylor-Britt to come back before I even knew that he was going to be the top earning free agent at the cornerback position. Also, if you look at the top, according to Sport Track, who's going to get the most money from free agents this offseason, the top edge rusher is a Bengal, the top cornerback is a Bengal, and I think the second highest edge rusher is also a Bengal, coming from the worst defense in the league. That maybe you should rethink being able to make a team in free agency. We know, as we've always known, how you win in this league is get a good coach, get a good quarterback, draft well. We've at least got one of those three things. But as I was saying, Cam Taylor-Britt, just simply his market would have to plummet to where he was slated to get 15, where if we get him for $5 million a year, I'm cool with that. To where we can kind of shore up this cornerback room. It's probably not got the highest ceiling in the world between Cam Taylor-Britt, Dax Hill, and DJ Turner, but it would have to come way the heck down because of this 5-day stint in jail. And one, I don't think it's going to, so we could throw it out the way. And secondly, does that excite anyone to kind of bring back the same guys that have floated around, even if they were the biggest name in free agency, the perceived best get I don't think that's going to excite anybody. I think we need new blood, new fresh faces in this locker room for this defense to work. Stone, we talked a little bit about it yesterday. Does this, I think the big question revolving around this is, what does this do to Cam Taylor-Britt, who's an impending free agents market? And is there a world in which you could desire wanting him to come back?
No, I think it's run its course, and we kind of talked about this on the live show yesterday. You just need new pieces and new bodies out there defensively, and I think you can sit back and say, you know what, the Bengals whiffed on Cam Taylor-Britt. It got off to a great start. Second-round pick. As a rookie, you're like, oh, my goodness, this guy's going to develop into our one. And the Bengals kind of asked him to be the one for a little bit, and he wasn't able to live up to that. And several different benchings occurred, and I think it was pretty much a consensus that he would not be back next year, and then this happens there as well. Again, I don't think this is necessarily the thing, the event that happened that's going to prevent him from being a Cincinnati Bengal next year. I think it's just the performance on the football field. Got benched several times over the course of the past few years. Credit to him. I mean, I guess he responded the right way. Lou Anarumo used to talk about that a couple of years ago, but I'm just ready to head in a different direction there. I think you've got your lockdown guy in DJ Turner and try to build around him and look for a different depth piece. But especially, I was shocked when you said that yesterday,
15.
that he was projected that much money. I mean, at that number, that's outrageous.
Well, he's 26 years old, and he's got really good tape. And it was a few years ago, but 2 years ago he was a premier cornerback, like a potential Pro Bowl cornerback. He hasn't been that for the last year and a half. So that's why it's up there, is because you've seen the highlights. He's been a second-round pick, so you think pretty highly of him. That's why he's getting there. If there's anything that getting on Sport Track and seeing what the projected free agent signings has taught me, it has swayed my opinion on if it's possible to rebuild something in free agency, because as we've learned, you don't. In the NFL, if a player's really good, then he's probably not going to the open market. And if he is going to the open market, there's something there. There's some reason why that's the case. Very rarely is there a no-strings-attached, really high-end player that is available for other teams to get. Either there's an age, there's injury problems, there's character issues, there's something there that if a good player goes to free agency, there's some baggage. And that's where it's kind of reshaped it. Because as I mentioned, Trey Hendrickson, he's going to be the top edge rusher. The second best edge rusher is going to be Joseph Asai, according to AAV from Sport Track. And the top cornerback, Cam Taylor-Britt. 3 guys from the worst defense that the worst defense in the league doesn't want to bring back. So it kind of reshapes your thinking when it comes to free agency. And yeah, I'm with you. As someone put in the chat, the secondary looked better without him. They played better when Cam Taylor-Britt was gone. And that's not the end-all, be-all. Sometimes you're playing inferior competition. Sometimes things just kind of go your way. But it's not a good sign when you're wondering if you're going to come back and, when you weren't here, they actually played better. So, yeah, it's probably ran its course. I hope it's an easy 5-day stay for Cam Taylor-Britt. Hopefully he learns how to drive less recklessly. But God bless wherever he goes. His market would have to, just severely plummet. Just plummet for the Bengals have to entertain bringing him back. And I'm talking like getting down to the $5 million a year to where he was projected to get 15, according to Sport Track. I don't know what that actually looks like. Other big news. The biggest news in probably all the sports yesterday. The Baltimore Ravens have parted ways with their head coach, John Harbaugh. Obviously had won a Super Bowl with them. Obviously this was his first losing season since 2015, I think is what I saw. Just 2 years ago, they were the number 1 seed playing in the AFC Championship. This is a team that, regardless of who they hire next year, will be thought of as a contender. Not just in the division, but for the entire whole shebang. If things go right, no one in the NFL in the regular season has dominated, not this year, but the 2 years prior, like the Baltimore Ravens. Truly just dominated. Pedal to the floor against teams. And for whatever reason, there's some reporting coming out that John and Lamar weren't on the same page. John had lost the locker room. John and some coaches. Whatever reason, they have decided to part ways. And now John Harbaugh is the biggest coaching candidate available. And it's times like this where maybe just holding back, maybe just pumping the brakes, to where Mike Brown on Monday sends out day after the end of the season, we are committed to Zach Taylor. We are committed to Duke Tobin. To where if you just hold off a week on that, You don't have that hanging over to where you can potentially go, well, maybe, John Harbaugh, it's going to cost a lot of money to bring him in, but outside of the Ravens, the Bengals would be one of the most attractive places to land for a new coach. And as I mentioned on this show before, if Mike Tomlin or John Harbaugh came available, I would do everything in my will. It is no constraints to your salary cap. It is just how much cachet do you want to spend towards your head coach. And I mentioned this before. I don't think there's a better ROI in professional sport, not just the NFL, professional sport, than a good head coach in the NFL. The top tier guys are making $15 million. That's what Cam Taylor-Britt is projected to make. The top tier guys are making 18, 20. And yeah, you can get someone that'll do the job like Zach Taylor does. And if you want an analogy, I said this on yesterday's show, I feel like he's the Tua Tagovailoa of coaching. Stone doesn't like that. I think it's pretty much a bullseye on the dartboard. But you can get someone competent, to play for $4 to $5 million. But as we've learned with Mike Vrabel, with Ben Johnson, with Liam Cohen, to where you pay a little extra for these higher-end guys or these higher-end perceived guys, you get a little bit better on your investment. Get a little bit better ROI. And I can almost promise you that and we're living in hypothetical land because as we know, Zach Taylor's coming back. And as we know, Mike Brown would never, ever spend $15 to $20 million on a head coach. But I can promise you that if they did that, if they fired Zach Taylor, paid off the rest of his contract, and threw a big old sack of cash at John Harbaugh and said, hey, come this way, come to us, then Mike Brown would immediately see the fruits of that investment. John Harbaugh is a proven winner. You can say what you want about, some deficiencies in the postseason. I think that his quarterback hasn't played the best in the postseason. You saw what happens when he gets good quarterback play. They won a Super Bowl over a decade ago, and they had a great defense. But when it's a guy like that can come into Cincinnati and can immediately reshape the tone of a franchise, that's something you got to jump at. That is something you've got to jump at. Speaking of jump, let's go to the hardwood. We mentioned it earlier. Host of the Rebound Rundown, college basketball analyst Paul Fritchner. Paul, how are you doing on this lovely Wednesday? Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Sorry I'm a couple minutes late, Reed. I appreciate you having me on, man. What's going on?
Not much. Hey, I wanted to ask about, I think there's a lot of storylines or revolving around a lot of the teams that you cover on the Rebound Rundown. And the first is one that has kind of snuck up on us here in town, just 20 minutes up the road in Oxford, Ohio from Hamilton, and that is the Miami Redhawks. Undefeated. They get a win last night. I was listening to your show this morning, and you mentioned it. It was the first time in which they didn't shoot well. Everyone had been waiting for the shots not to fall, and they still get a win. Is that encouraging to see for the Redhawks?
I think it's extremely encouraging because Western Michigan is not a good team. And that's what I was talking about on the show today, that it just would have been such a bummer, right, to give back all that goodwill that you built up against Akron on Saturday, where you have the crowd in the stands and you have all this national attention because it was their best win of the season. Mid-major rankings all over the country have them either probably 1 or 2, depending on if you want to rank Gonzaga as a mid-major or not. So all of this national attention that Miami is getting, if you go to Toledo on Friday and you lose, you can't really hang your head about that. That's a tough game on the road in the MAC. If you lose in a couple of weeks to Kent State, that's a really tough game in the MAC, a coin flip game. But you don't want to lose at home to Western Michigan. And the shots aren't falling. You go 6 for 26 from 3, right? You're only a couple of days removed from that Akron game. Mm-hmm. But they still got it out. And that's a huge win for me, for to see what this team can be going forward, to be able to win a game like that. You just kind of felt like it's the MAC. There are going to be weeknight games where it's not going your way. And what does Miami look like in those games? Got our answer last night in at least one of them.
All right, so let me ask you this question. They got another big game. There's a lot of teams at the top of the MAC that are having really good years. Teams that Miami hasn't played yet. They go up to John Savage Arena up in Toledo this Friday, and they get a win. Is it possible that they could run? Does that shed a little bit of confidence in you that they could run the board here in the MAC?
I think they'll probably end up somewhere with like 2 or 3 losses. They are favored on KenPom the rest of the way, but if you really look at how these games are, I think eventually there's going to be a game where not having Evan Ipsaro catches up to them. I think we've already seen it's not going to completely derail their season. Luke Skaljak has filled in very nicely for Miami, but I think eventually there's going to come a point where Travis Steele is going to wish he had that explosiveness and that playmaking. And I mean, look, for as good as Evan is this year, credit to Evan for the leap that he took, because I'm not sure anybody was expecting him to be as good and he's your starting point guard. So obviously he's going to be very good and very impactful. But he was, the second leading scorer on the team. He was just always making the right play, decision making, all of that explosiveness. And he's not the tallest guy. So to be able to do that is, good positional size in the MAC, but not extraordinarily huge for being a point guard, or on the smaller end. And I do think that Miami will probably end up with, I would say, somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 or 3, just because they're going to have a game like last night, and it's going to happen on the road, and it might happen on the road when they're still undefeated, and the other team's fans show up because they're going to give Miami their best shot. Maybe that's against Toledo. Maybe that's against Kent State. And I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer here. I think it's just the reality of the situation. And the other reality of the situation is, Reed, they're not competing for an at-large bid. No matter –
okay,
it stinks. And I assumed that you were going to ask that next.
That was next, yes.
Yeah. Well, do you want to just ask the question? You want to do that?
Yeah, we'll do this for the sound bit. What would it take for Miami? Is it possible at all that they can get an at-large bid?
I think it's possible, but I don't have faith in it, just because I don't have faith in the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee to do the right thing. I think it would take a lot. I think it might even take them being undefeated up until the MAC title game and then losing. I think that would probably be, or maybe if you lost on the road at Kent State and you only had 1 loss going into the title game, maybe that's it. But you can't go into the MAC title game with more than 1 loss in the regular season. And even that at that point might be tough, just because Miami's schedule in the non-conference, we've talked so much about it, wasn't great. And that was no fault of their own. They tried to play some of those bigger games, just couldn't get those games on the schedule. The teams knew that Miami was going to be good. They didn't want to play them. There are a lot of dynamics at play, but when you come down to it at the end of the day, if Miami has 2 or 3 losses and they're going up against a Power 4 team that might have 7 or 8 losses, but maybe they picked up 1 huge win here, and that's the team that's going to get picked. And it sucks. And that's why I'm so against NCAA tournament expansion, because all of these mid-major coaches and athletic directors are for it because they want other bids for their conferences, right? But the problem is those conferences aren't – the MAC is still going to be probably a 1-bid league. They're not going to give those bids to the mid-major teams. They're going to give the bids to the, North Carolinas of the world from last year. Probably didn't deserve to be in, right? Or you go down the list, Virginia from a few years ago, you go down the list of teams that didn't deserve to be in. Put in a team like Miami. They're just not going to do it.
So let me ask you this. One thing you mentioned is teams were unwilling to play Miami because they knew they were good. There's not a whole lot to gain if you're a power conference school and playing Miami, because if you lose, it looks terrible. You win, you don't gain a whole lot from that. Do you think that dynamic in college basketball overall is really going to really start to pinch these mid-major schools if it hasn't already, to where like they can't even get the opportunity to earn those big wins anymore?
What I will tell you is there are a lot of schools using Miami right now and seeing what Miami is doing. There are a lot of mid-major schools using Miami as a test case for next season. I know that. And that's because they're seeing Miami
who played D3 and NIA schools.
They played 4 non-Division I games, right? If you look at their net, if you go to the net rankings this morning, it'll say 13-0. They played 3 games outside of Division I, whatever it is, and that's because their net rankings, they don't even include those games, right? So their record online would say 13-0, even though they're 16-0 on the season. But there are a lot of teams at the mid-major level, like right around there in some of those conferences, that are looking at what Miami's doing. Because, look, they're getting all this national exposure. Travis Steele's on all these national shows. Andy Katz has him on the other day. Every time I get on Instagram, it's Travis Steele doing another interview. It's great publicity for Miami. It's great publicity for their conference, right? Just the fact, Reed, that you even asked me, can Miami of Ohio get an at-large bid in the NCAA tournament? I mean, that is insane. The MAC hasn't been a two-bid league since 1999.
Who was it? Who was the team that got the at-large bid?
It was Kent and Miami, wasn't it?
Miami got the at-large bid.
Yeah, Miami got that bid. Yeah.
Wally Zerbiak, yeah.
Wally's team. Yeah, Volleyball. That was back before Kent was Kent State. That was just Kent. They were just Kent.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway. I just think that there's I think there's a dynamic right now with Miami that is going to be used. Because the other thing, too, and this is the last thing I'll say on this, Miami is, if you're going to schedule like that and you want to get the attention and you want to, create that buzz and maybe even put yourself in that conversation, you got to win the games. I mean, if Miami was sitting here at 15-1 right now with a loss in their third game to whoever, we're not having this conversation. Locally, we care, but we care because there's a 0 in the loss column.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this question, and in regards to Miami, and you certainly won't have the answer, but I'd like to pull your ear on your thoughts on this one. Miami, as a school, obviously has a lot of big names that have gone through that on the football side and everything like that. Obviously, the MAC is, it's thought of as an okay football conference. They play on ESPN. It's obviously not one of the powers, but, they've got some recognition. Do you think that because of the alumni that Miami holds, the coach that they currently have, they're building a new arena, that they could really start to churn something out there to where, I don't know how their NIL works, but hey, let's start being a basketball school. Let's go really into this thing. Do you think that could be in the future for Miami?
I think if Travis Steele keeps this rolling the way he is and he stays at Miami and really invests in this program the way he has over the last few seasons, and they get a new arena. The arena and the facilities don't matter as much now as they used to because all the players care about is NIL.
Money.
But maybe the NIL you can hope water finds its level there, and they get a nice new arena, and the fan base buys fully back into what they're doing. I'm really biased, man. You're having me on as my lower third says college basketball broadcaster, right? But I don't know why Miami – it just makes so much sense to me to go all in on the basketball side because, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's really – and I fully
their identities in football, though, right? Yeah, their identity.
I fully appreciate the history
Brown,
of Miami football.
Right.
That's tough. So I'm just talking in general here, like from what Miami can do in the MAC and being a one-bid league, it's tough probably to sell on the fact you're probably not going to get an at-large bid, but – if you can continue to put yourself in the conversation and get all this national pub, look at what they're doing. I mean, they've been everywhere in the last week and a half. So, yeah, I think the new arena will really help, but it's always going to come back to football.
Sure. All right, so Stone, if you have that soundbite, I know, Paul, you've heard this already. It's made its way. Wes Miller yesterday, the Bearcats lose to West Virginia. I'm going to play the clip, and I know you've heard it before, but for those that have watched it, they may have not heard this clip before, and I want to hear your thoughts. Stone, if you want to go ahead and run that clip.
Coach Miller has joined us now courtside here in Morgantown. Coach, I feel for everybody in that locker room right now. You did a great job.
Don't feel for us. We get to come out and play basketball. I don't care about the noise, Dan. I don't care. I don't care what people think. I only care about my team, and I care about my program. And you know what? It's almost comical. We'll get a break. We just got to stay together and stay brilliant. It's us against the whole world. We know that. We're going to get a break. We're going to keep going. Period. I'll answer any questions you guys want. Everybody can quit on us. Everybody. I hear it. Everybody. Go ahead. Us against the world. Come on.
It's my immediate takeaway, and I want to hear yours. My immediate takeaway is, one, it felt not on the same level, but eerily similar to the Richard Sherman, Aaron Andrews interview. To Dan was not poking or prodding or anything, and Wes just goes off obviously frustrated. But secondly, just that. It feels like the frustrations are bubbling, and there's no wooden spoon over the pot, and it's getting all over the stove. Paul, your takeaway from that Wes Miller interview?
Yeah, I think he realizes this is the end of the road, and he's trying to do anything right now he can to save his job, and I totally understand that. And the frustrating thing is for Cincinnati, yeah, they have been really close. The problem is, just like always, they can't get over the hump. They're 9-41 in quad one games under Wes Miller. They're 3-50 in games under Wes Miller when they're trailing with 5 minutes to go. They're not winning games that they need to win, and I think Wes understands that. He understands the fact that, now at this point in the season, I had a caller call into the show and leave a voicemail and a rundown this morning and ask, is there a path for Cincinnati to still make the NCAA tournament? And I mean, by the book, yeah, there is, because they play in the Big 12 and they have 16 games left. And if you go 14-2, you're absolutely in the NCAA tournament, or at least right there in the conversation. But does anybody listening to me right now think that Cincinnati is going to rattle off 14 of their next 16 and make the NCAA tournament? Absolutely not. Their analytics back them up a little bit. I mean, they're in the top 70 in KenPom, so their analytics are at least staying put a bit. But Reed, I listened to Wes's entire post-game interview last night there on the radio because it went on for another probably 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And he's been pretty emotional lately. I mean, I listen to pretty much everything he does, and he's been pretty amped up and emotional. But last night was more than he had shown even in the last couple of weeks, and he'd been pretty fiery in some of the recent ones too.
So you said he feels like he's at the end of the road. How secure do you think his job is? You think it's gone? You think it's done?
I said coming into the year they were going to have to make the NCAA tournament. And I even asked somebody going into the season, is making the tournament enough with the money that they spent on this roster? I mean, you're talking about an 8-figure roster.
Right.
And if you're going to promote that number, and obviously you're not promoting it officially from graphics, right? But that number gets leaked. That's a number that they clearly wanted out because so many people are talking about it to show their investment. There's a reason. If you're going to spend that much money on a roster, you're going to show the investment. That's a number that gets leaked, right? Between $10 and $12 million that you spend on this roster, they're not even going to sniff the NCAA tournament. And to spend that much money, I asked the question going into the year: when you spend that much, is even getting in enough to save your job, right? Like if you end up as a 7 or a 10 seed and you play in that 7-10 game in the first round of the NCAA tournament and you lose, is that even enough? Right? Like you have to win a game at that point. And I just cannot, unless for some reason the buyout is just completely prohibitive of bringing him or of firing him, right? Like they just can't find the, whatever it would be, $4.5 million. I cannot imagine he's back as a coach at Cincinnati next year unless they go on some miracle run.
Yeah, you're right. That $10 to $12 million roster, just making the tournament isn't good enough. But it would have bought him time if they were able to do it this year. If they made the tournament, it would have bought him another year. It's not a long-term sustainable thing to, you're just the 10 seed. Yeah, that's not going to play. But yeah, you mentioned the stat. I saw it online. Was it 3-50, 3-51 now when trailing in the final 5 minutes? That's honestly a sign of bad coaching. That's just not like, that's a sign of bad coaching. If you needed any big billboard, any big thing to shine a big neon light and say, this guy isn't it, it's that right there. And I'm with you. I can't imagine a world in which he loses his job. I think you would know this better than I. They have to wait till April to save money on the buyout, right? How's that work?
Well, that's the thing, is that the buyout goes down on April 1st, but by that point, the transfer portal has been open for a week. So at what point do you have – Wes isn't going to want to concede that money, but at what point do you have some sort of good faith, hey, we're just sitting here for like, let's say they don't make any kind of postseason tournament, right?
And coaches would be gone, right? Like your targets would be gone because other teams would have knocked them up already.
Exactly. So if you're sitting here waiting till April 1st – and it's March 15th or 16th, you've lost in the Big 12 tournament. Yeah, and
you lost in the crown.
Imagine that. Yeah, but you lose in the first round, second round of the Big 12 tournament, and then you get to a point where you have to sit there for 2 weeks, and you just know you're going to be fired, and you're just sitting there waiting for a day. I mean, I think at that point there's probably some sort of good faith negotiation there, but maybe not. I mean, Wes doesn't need to just concede $5 million, because right now his buyout's at 9.9. April 1st, it goes down to 4.69.
It's a lot of money.
Well, he's not going to just throw away $5.3 million.
So it's a tough spot. And it's almost like it was very deliberate in that April 1 window when they were making those contract negotiations. It's a very deliberate timeline is where it kind of handcuffs the organization to either make a decision or you're going to be stuck with them for another year. We'll see. We'll see. I'm with you. There's plenty of signs pointing that it's
and
not
look,
going
there are
well.
some great coaches. This is going to be an awesome coaching carousel this year. There are going to be a lot of coaches that are let go this offseason. There are going to be a lot of coaches at the mid-major level that are available. I think they'll probably go for a sitting high major coach or a sitting head coach. Not going to go the assistant route. I could imagine. So, yeah, there's some names for sure. I mean, Jared Calhoun's obviously one that a lot of UC fans want. Josh Schertz at St. Louis has been phenomenal. I don't know if he'd want to jump that quickly from St. Louis, but there are going to be some good names available.
And Travis Steele will have an undefeated season, so Travis Steele will get 3 jobs without having to move in Division I college basketball.
Still living in the same place.
Right, it's the first time that's ever happened. Speaking of Travis Steele, who his former team was the Xavier Musketeers, they play tonight up in Milwaukee against Marquette, a team that hasn't won a game since early December, and Xavier is underdogs up there tonight. Are we back to the mean when it comes to this Xavier team? Is it back to where we thought they were before they went on that 3-week stretch where they played really good basketball? Are we back to where we thought they were when the season started?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't necessarily even really mean this in a bad way. I just mean I think this is the Xavier team that most of us were expecting to see this year, a team that is full of a bunch of players that when they play very well, can win some tight, close games in the Big East, like what we saw at Georgetown. But at the end of the day, this is a team that doesn't have the top-end scorer, that top-end playmaker that they need to really set them apart as a top half of the Big East roster. And, now you mentioned it, Reed, tonight. Last year, Xavier went to Marquette Marquette was the number 7 team in the country in the middle of January. And right. Xavier won at Marquette in a game that basically set them up for the NCAA tournament. That's basically the pin that held together Xavier's NCAA tournament resume, was that win at Marquette. And now, I mean, there's a great argument you could make that this game tonight and the one that's going to happen at Cintas between Xavier and Marquette, those are the 2 games that are going to decide who stays out of the Big East's last place spot.
Yeah.
And, Xavier misses a chance to get a win at DePaul, and I'm purely talking about staying out of that 11 spot. Xavier has one of the longest streaks in the country of teams that have not finished last in the conference. I don't think they will finish last, but I think they could finish 10th. And they have an impossible stretch of games in the last 2 weeks of January and the first week of February. Xavier does. So being able to go on the road as a 5.5-point underdog tonight and get a win, keep Marquette winless in the Big East would be a real step in the right direction, I think, for Xavier.
So you already answered my question. I was going to ask if you thought Xavier was the worst team in the Big East, as we've now gotten some data on that. I don't want to go there. Let me ask you a more positive question. What is the ceiling for this Muskie team? Like, is it like 7th? Sick, what is the ceiling to where this team plays really well over the next 2 months and they reach their potential? What does that ceiling look like?
I think it would be probably 7th or 8th in the Big East. I'll say 8th. I think Georgetown, Butler, and Marquette are really going to struggle because Butler, you've already seen them, and they're without their point guard, Jalen Jackson. I thought Butler was going to be much better than they've shown in the first couple of weeks in the Big East. The problem is I thought they were going to be better when they had their starting point guard. He's now out for the season. They were picked 10th in the league. I don't know if they'll probably finish more in that 8-9 game, but it's a bummer that they're not going to reach their true potential without Jalen Jackson. Georgetown looks like a complete mess right now. They're 1-3 in the Big East. Right. Georgetown, Reed, I don't know if you saw this. They went 1 for 23 in the second half last night. Against
Yes.
One shot. Georgetown made one shot in the final 23 minutes of that game last night. They only scored 15 points in the second half. Most of them were from the free throw line. They lost to DePaul on the road. Disaster of a game. Ed Cooley, it's his 3rd year there. They don't seem to have it rolling. So, look, I mean, I think the 8-9 game is probably the ceiling for Xavier, just because you've already seen him, lose at home to Creighton, lose on the road at DePaul, a couple of games that, I mean, Creighton beat them by 41, but Creighton was not playing well going into the game, so you thought maybe they could sneak that one by. Yeah, I would still anticipate Xavier ending up somewhere in the 14 to 15 win range, and maybe that can get you, into that 8-9 game.
2 questions left for you.
And I mean 14, 15 wins overall, not
Sure. I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. 2 questions left for you. The Real Spirit Cat put in a super chat. He says, "What's the right time to take down a Christmas tree, Big League Paul?" What's the right time to take down a Christmas tree?
So I put that on Twitter last night. Yeah. So he responded back. I had a lot of replies. So I think the best reply I got was that I need to leave it up until Miami loses a game. I think the Christmas tree may stay up until Miami loses. Now, our old friend Mike Schmaltz just replied in and said, leave it up till the college football national championship. I thought this upcoming weekend was going to be the sweet spot. Like, you're removed from the Epiphany. You're not quite deep into January yet. Get out of it. But we just bought a house. So we've left it up because we don't really have anything for that corner of the living room yet. So it just kind of
fills it up. Fills up space. Fills up space.
What do you think? You're usually pretty good with it.
Well, I mean, you answer the right Catholic answer, which is the Epiphany. That's the final day of Christmas. That's the 12th day of Christmas is the Epiphany. That's when the Magi get there, and that's when you take down your Christmas lights. And that's when I took down my Christmas lights was yesterday. So that's my answer. January 6th, the Epiphany, is when you're supposed to take down your Christmas lights, though it doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Final question I got for you. What's a better beer, Cincy Light or Muskie Lager?
Muskie Lager.
I don't believe
I don't believe you. Can I say something?
Sure.
I've never had a Cincy Light, so I don't know.
I still don't know if I believe you.
I'll
take your word for it.
I think at one point one got passed to me and I took a sip, but I've never had a full Cincy Light.
So you said I've never had one. I've never had
a full Cincy Light.
And then you're like, well, I have had one. So listen, you're not on trial right now. I'll let you get off. You said Muskie Lager is the better beer, even though the court of opinion is it may not believe you. I'll let you off the hook. There's not going to be another.
I just haven't given. I don't have a big enough sample size of the Cincy Light to be able to correctly answer that question. I do enjoy the Muskie Lager. They're heavy enough that you can drink a couple and get away with the same thing that maybe a light beer you need 5 or 6 of them. But I don't know. That's my take. Good branding.
Great branding. Paul, thank you so much for sharing part of your Wednesday. Rebound rundown. Listen to Paul every. You got another big game, national television, right? Coming up, or did it just happen?
Just did. I had 2 on CBS Sports Network over the weekend. I'll have another one in February. So, keep it rolling there.
Congratulations, Paul. See you, man.
Thanks, man.
Take down that Christmas.
See you, Reed. See you, done.
See ya.
Paul Fritchner. I thought I knew that line of questioning. Yeah, I knew he was going to be diplomatic about it. I think at some point here on Chatterbox we'll make a video, maybe on like a Friday or something like that, where we'll get all the branded beer for all the local colleges, Muskie Lager, obviously Cincy Light, and even Miami has one, Red Brick Ale or something along those lines, and we'll do a taste test on which one's better. I'm a Muskie guy. I'm not afraid to admit that I've had a Cincy Light in the summer when it's nice and warm. And I'm not afraid to admit that I won't be enjoying too many more Muskie Lagers in the future. Great branding, though. The can looks really cool. Can looks really, really, really neat. All right, Stone. Takeaways from that interview were he doesn't believe that Wes Miller's cracking. He doesn't believe that Wes Miller's job is going to be secure, but we'll see because that is a big – if you wait till April 1st, it's obviously a tougher or easier pill to swallow when it comes to the buyout at $4.5 million. But at that point, you're kind of dooming your 2026 season by doing that. Maybe you can pocket some of your NIL money and just punt on 2026. Get someone similar to kind of what Xavier did this past year. Similar to what Xavier did, where they haven't spent all of their resources into this year, realizing that, hey, we'll give a better effort going into 2026 and 2027. Miami, they probably only got 1, maybe 2 bullets to lose if they don't win the MAC tournament this year, but they've got a big game. And maybe we shouldn't be worried about Miami getting an at-large bid, and maybe we should just be worried about the Red Hawks having a great year and just enjoying the season that is happening currently. They're undefeated, one of the few remaining undefeated teams this year, and they got a big game this Friday. They can get a touch on NKU or Wright State or any of the other local teams, Dayton. But we'll have Paul on some other time to talk about some of those teams. Let's get into buy or sell here in the final 15 minutes. And I'll start it off.
Yeah.
You know, I before I get this question, it's interesting because I asked Stone 2 months ago, and these are going to be NFL-related buy or sells. I asked Stone 2 months ago if there was a possibility in which every AFC North coach is fired. Obviously, Kevin Stefanski lost his job Monday morning. Yesterday, we find out John Harbaugh loses his job. We've been talking about if Zach Taylor should be the head coach. Buy or sell, Mike Tomlin will be fired with a loss this weekend. Stone.
It's a good question because I was shocked. I know people were talking about, Harbaugh, he might be coaching for his job here. I never really bought into that. Clearly, I was wrong. By the way, I still think it's a mistake by Baltimore. Like, how are you going to do better than John Harbaugh? Again, they're kind of like Cincinnati. Like, when you have Lamar Jackson, the expectation is to win a Super Bowl right here, right now. Could you potentially take another step in the wrong direction if you're Baltimore? I think that's certainly on the table. I will sell this, but I would have definitely sold it for Baltimore, and I was wrong, and he ended up getting fired. But, I mean, just the fact that, they started out great, the Steelers, as they typically do, and then they hit that rough patch, and it was like, this is finally the year where they're not going to have a winning record. And sure enough, they end up having a winning record, backing into the playoffs, got fortunate with the missed kick. But I'm going to sell that. I just can't see Pittsburgh making that move. But, again, I didn't see it with Baltimore either.
Pittsburgh's a little more loyal to their coaches, even more so than here in Cincinnati. Like, there's a reason Mike Tomlin's been there as long as he has, and he hasn't won a playoff game in a decade. It'll be a decade since his last playoff win. You could do a slew of stats regarding the last playoff win. Donald Trump hadn't been inaugurated for his first term. TikTok had not been invented yet. Those are all since the last time Mike Tomlin's won a playoff game. I will buy. I think if the Pittsburgh Steelers do not win this weekend, that Mike Tomlin will be without a job. Because here's the point. It's not that Mike Tomlin's a bad coach. It's not. It's at some point things aren't working and the message that you send isn't hitting the same way. We've seen almost all the great college football coaches, they go out on their back. Right? You can go up to Syracuse with Boeheim and college basketball. Like, at some point, the message and the mantra just gets a little old. And Mike Tomlin, I do believe if he does get fired, will go somewhere else and will have success. I don't think it's going to be a terrible situation. I mentioned it before. For months, I said if Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh becomes available, the Bengals should be knocking down their door. That's not happening. But I do think Mike Tomlin is going to be fired if they lose this game. So I will buy, and I'll say this. It doesn't take the world's greatest debater. It doesn't take the world's greatest lawyer to argue that Zach Taylor was the worst head coach in the AFC North. Between Kevin Stefanski, John Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin, and Zach Taylor. It doesn't take the world's best doesn't take the best rhetoric to win that argument. And he's the one with the best job security. He's the one coming back. Kevin Stefanski, 2-time coach of the year. Tomlin's won a Super Bowl. Harbaugh's won a Super Bowl. And they consistently. Tomlin hasn't had a losing season. John Harbaugh had been dominating in a way in the regular season over not this year, but the 2 years prior, in a way that no one else was. Just dominating teams with the 1 seed in the AFC. Had the AFC Championship game at home 2 years ago. Lost his job. But here we are running out Tua Tagovailoa as our head coach for another year, and Stone's shaking his head because he hates that so much.
How many playoff wins Tua have? Hello?
0.
You there?
0.
Oh.
I mean, what do you? Tua has also more touchdown passes than Zach. Like, we're going to do stats. It's a silly thing. What we are going to do is recognize that maybe it's the sum of the parts and not the actual player. Let's do this. Buy or sell. If Zach was fired, the Bengals would be the most attractive coaching gig open. And that is knowing the Ravens, but that is also Joe Burrow. No one's had more success. There's no available quarterback that's had more success in the postseason than Joe Burrow. Jamar Chase is the best wide receiver in the league. Is the Bengals the most attractive coaching position if it became available? It's not, but let's play a hypothetical game. Buy or sell?
Sell. I think clearly – I mean, it's funny because, like, the Ravens make this decision, and now Harbaugh is but far and away the top candidate, and it's not even close. Like, who's second? McCarthy, Saleh, and those guys are fine, but, like, Harbaugh.
Stefanski, right?
You're right, yeah. Like, but Harbaugh far and away is the best. And also on the other side of that, the Ravens opening is by far the best opening that there is right now. And, I think me and you look at it and we're like, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, who the heck wouldn't want to be here? But I think, I don't know this for a fact, this is just me speculating, I think in NFL circles, it's still kind of a turnoff just because of the clown operation that is the Cincinnati Bengals. And you're not getting top-of-the-line money, too, if you're coming to Cincinnati as well. So I'm definitely selling because the Ravens opening is better than the Bengals anyway. But I feel like, it sounds crazy, but I feel like some people might be more intrigued by New York than Cincinnati. I think that's crazy because I wouldn't be. Joe Burrow, sign me up. But I feel like people in the NFL might think that, you know what, New York is better.
I mean, the Giants are a legacy team in the same way that, like, the Cardinals are in baseball, right? Like, it's like that's a team that almost every decade, other than the last one, no, they won one in the last one. They won a Super Bowl pretty much every decade, right? Like that's what they do. It's just a well-run organization. Hasn't been recently. Ever since Eli's been gone, it's not been great, but it's a well-run organization, or at least used to be, and still has the perception of that being the case. Yeah, I don't know. There's no doubt, absolutely no doubt, that the way that the Bengals are ran, and rightfully so, turns off a lot of people. But in this league, you're made or break by your quarterback. I mean, look at every head coach that gets fired. He's got a terrible quarterback. And even guys like John Harbaugh, like they've had 6 years with Lamar and have had success. It's just it feels like there's another level there, and they're not going to get there. So you're made or broken with your starting quarterback, and there's not a better one that's going to be available than Joe Burrow. So I'll agree with you. The Ravens are just better ran overall than the Bengals. That's a better spot, but the Bengals I think are clearly the second best spot. Let's ask another playoff head coaching. What about if the Bills lose? Is Sean McDermott fired, buy or sell?
That's interesting. That's very, very interesting.
They are favored.
Jacksonville?
Yeah, they are favored on the road in Jacksonville, but it's a close spread. It's like 1.5, something like that.
Yeah.
It's a pick 'em.
Yeah. I'll buy that. From a GM perspective, like if you draft Josh Allen, and now it seems obvious, but he was out of Wyoming. Like, if you draft him as high as they did and it hits the way it does, I kind of feel like you're safe for as long as he's playing, honestly, regardless of what else happens.
Right.
But the head coach, I don't know, because we look at this roster, and a couple of years ago, we're like, oh, the Bills are the best team in football. Weren't able to achieve that, underachieved. And now you look at them, and it's like, yeah, they're in the playoffs, but they're really only here because of Josh Allen. I understand how important the quarterback position is, but they got holes all over the place. They are not a good football team. Now, the Jaguars, as you like to say, are not a perennial playoff team. So, like, them not playing well in this game with the rookie head coach, I don't think that would surprise a lot of people. You get Buffalo a win potentially. But this Bills team isn't good. They're just relying on 17. I think he's on the hot seat going in this game.
I agree. I'm buying this too. I think it's known. Like, I think, like, McDermott knows, like, this is a make or break situation for him as the head coach. And I'll also say this, where if you are putting those kinds of guidelines, if you're putting those kinds of goalposts on you probably should move on anyways. Like, if you are setting expectations for any relationship and you're like, well, if this doesn't happen, I'm out. And then it happens, you're like, is that really going to appease your appetite for whatever the reason that would cause the breakup to begin with? So, yeah, I think it's pretty clear. I'm buying that one. If they lose, Sean McDermott is out. I'd ask the question, like, if they barely win, is we going to be saying the same thing next week? Like, is it really going to secure Sean McDermott's job? I think Sean McDermott has to make at least the AFC Championship game. I think he has to at least make that to save his job. So I will buy. Buy or sell? Vague one here. Ravens made the right decision.
Sell. I did not think that was the right decision at all. Again, I talked about this with Zach Taylor, but it's a whole different extreme with Harbaugh. Harbaugh is one of the best in the business. Like, there's a world here where you significantly take a step in the wrong direction, and it sets you off a couple of years. And in my opinion, you can't afford to do that when you have an all-world quarterback in Lamar Jackson. So I would have kept him. You look at what he's done recently. I mean, they're a kick away from going back to the playoffs after how bad they started. Right. All they do is win. I get they've underachieved a little bit here in the playoffs, certainly, quote-unquote, choking, right? They choked when they hosted Kansas City and weren't able to win that game. Had plenty of opportunities last year against Buffalo to win that game, weren't able to do it. But there's not a Ben Johnson here that's a candidate right now. Like, who do you turn to if you're Baltimore? You're rolling the dice here, and it's been reported that, the final straw was that he wanted to hold on to the OC Monken, and they wanted to go in a different direction with Lamar offensively, and that's kind of what led to his firing. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what's being reported. But I think it's a mistake. He's legit, and he's going to have success wherever he goes, unless he goes to Tennessee.
Yeah, it feels like what's going on in an otherwise great organization is there's a lot of finger-pointing going on about what happened this year, why they haven't been able to get over the hump, why they haven't been able to beat the Chiefs or make it to the Super Bowl or win a Super Bowl or anything like that. There's a lot of finger-pointing going on as it's bubbling, right? And then eventually it spills over. And when there's a lot of finger-pointing going on, it's pretty easy which side you pick, and that's the quarterback. It just is what it is. Like you stick with the quarterback because he's the one that plays on the field. So they're doing that. I will also sell this. I think John Harbaugh is a winner. There's a reason that he gets fired, and what Adam Schefter put out that there's 6 other job openings, and he's had 7 teams call him immediately. Do you think the Bengals are that team that called? Do you think that's the Bengals? Do you think Mike Brown called up John Harbaugh? I think we're the mystery team that called up John Harbaugh? No, obviously not. I'm saying this was not the right call. John Harbaugh's a winner. The Harbaughs are winners, and he's going to go somewhere else and probably have a fair amount of success. It's pretty hard to match what he did in Baltimore, but I think you're fooling yourself if you think that he doesn't turn around a team very, very quickly. I mean, maybe not in year 1, but by year 2 that they're going to be right there on the doorstep of the postseason wherever he goes, whether it's the New York Giants, whether it's whatever. Maybe the Raiders' job is an attractive one because they had the first overall pick, and buy or sell, Fernando Mendoza is a franchise quarterback.
I got to buy this. I was late hopping on the Mendoza train. I hopped on after the Big Ten title game, and then I still needed to see it one more time. And if you're a box score guy and you didn't watch those games, you're like, what the heck are you talking about? He wasn't that great against Ohio State or Alabama. He was excellent against both of those teams. He's a tough son of a gun. My goodness, he takes some shots and he pops up. Doesn't look like the most graceful athlete, but if it's 3rd and 3, he'll go get 4 or 5 yards for you, keep the chains moving. He's surgical with his accuracy, and people pick on him for how he handled the press conference or the interview after the Ohio State game. Clearly his teammates adore him, love going to war with him. It took me a little bit, but yeah, he's a franchise guy.
It's not I don't want to do the draft day thing like the Kevin Costner movie, to where like you can read a lot about a player or an athlete by the way that people react around them. And sometimes it's hard to find out, but when people respond to Mendoza the way that they do, and maybe it's just because they're all in this brotherhood bond of taking Indiana Hoosier football, the worst team in college football history, to the promised land where they're at right now, kind of bonds you together, and you're doing it behind the guy that's going to be the number 1 overall pick. But it's pretty clear he's got a cult of personality around him, and that plays at the quarterback position. That plays. You've got to be able to be a leader. And as I've mentioned on this show thousands of times, there's leadership matters in this world. It does. We are sheep as human beings at times, and we need to be shepherded in the right direction. And Fernando Mendoza looks like that. I'm absolutely buying Fernando Mendoza is a franchise quarterback. We'll see what happens in Oakland or in Vegas, because that's a dumpster fire more often than it is not. Maybe they'll bring in John Harbaugh. Maybe that's a job that intrigues John Harbaugh. And speaking of Raiders, speaking of head coaches, final buy or sell here on a Wednesday. Buy or sell, John Gruden will be a head coach in the NFL week 1 next year.
So, okay. No way. I love John Gruden, what he's done. He's in our space now in the media. He's hilarious, and he clearly knows ball, very insightful. I love watching his content. Was at one point a great NFL coach, but that ship has sailed.
Okay. It's hard for me to take a take on this either way, because I could see a team being hungry enough. I could see a team being truly hungry And, hey, this dude's won before. He hasn't coached in a while, but he's won before. And he's taken long periods of breaks before and won again. So it's easy. And also he's a football junkie. Like, that matters. That matters. You've got to be heavily committed to this thing in a world that's maybe unhealthy. So it's hard for me to take a take either way. It wouldn't surprise me either way, but I'd say the safer bet is saying sell. Just the baggage and everything goes on like that. I'm saying sell. John Gruden. That was a fun show today, Stone. Thank you so much for being here. This was fun today. Tomorrow we're going to have Paul Daner on, talk about the Bengals some more. And then I'm gonna see what I can do for Friday to get us a host on the show, have some fun, round out the week. I'm excited. Tomorrow I get to watch college football again. That's what I love. I love college football now. Stone Shields show coming up right now. Chris Welsh is going to be the guest. Have a good show, Stone. See you guys tomorrow.
Here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shields Show. My name is Stone Shields. We are here. We are live. It is Wednesday, January 7th. Appreciate everybody hanging out through Off the Bench into our show. Got a fun show planned out for the 11 o'clock hour. We're going to talk Trey Hendrickson to start some things off. James Rapine pointing out that there's a world where he could be back with the Cincinnati Bengals next year, which I think certainly was surprising. Zach didn't come out and say that, but he said, quote, there is always a path. So we'll have a Trey Hendrickson conversation to start out today's show. Then after that, 11:15 here in about 12 minutes, Chris Welsh will be joining the show. We're going to talk about the Cincinnati Reds, longtime Reds broadcaster. He's tremendous, has been at it for 30-plus years with the Cincinnati Reds, looking to talk with him about a variety of Reds offseason topics. We'll hit on the rotation, certainly, the staff from an arm perspective, and certainly the position players there as well. We'll talk Tito, and looking forward to that conversation in about 12 minutes with Chris Welsh. Also, news of the day in the NFL yesterday, John Harbaugh fired by the Baltimore Ravens. We'll talk about that. Great news for the Cincinnati Bengals, certainly not having to play him twice a year. Still have to play with Lamar Jackson and, of course, the Baltimore Ravens, but no longer a great head coach in John Harbaugh. By the way, I think that's a massive mistake for Baltimore to move off of him, but we'll discuss that. Also, we'll discuss Wes Miller. Had an opportunity to close out the game on the road against West Virginia, kind of weathered the storm in the first half when Honor Huff simply couldn't miss a shot, hung in there, took a lead late. Typical UC fashion, not able to hold on to the lead. And look, I used to work over at 700 WLW. He was on with Dan Horde, Terry Nelson. Terry, friend of the show, of course. And he, what did the kids say? Crash out. He was just collapsing on the air with those two guys after the game. So we'll talk about Wes a little bit as well. Also, Cliff Kingsbury, relieved of his duties. I got some interesting remarks on that because, everybody views Cliff Kingsbury as this unbelievable head coach and unbelievable play caller. And I don't know if it's really worked out that way, but he is no longer the OC with Jaden Daniels in Washington. Appreciate everyone, as always, hanging out with us. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on our way to 22,000 subscribers here at the channel. But let's start with the Cincinnati Bengals, and let's start with Trey Hendrickson. Obviously, Zach spoke with the media early in the week, right on the heels of the loss to the Cleveland Browns, answered a bunch of different questions from the media. Of course, they asked him about Trey Hendrickson and his future here with the Cincinnati Bengals, and he said, quote, "There is always a path." I was a little bit surprised to hear that from Zach Taylor. I think if it were up to Zach, he would be totally fine moving off Trey Hendrickson. I've said multiple times here on this show, that is what I personally would do. I would move off of Trey Hendrickson. I appreciate the heck out of everything he's done with his time here with the Cincinnati Bengals. I think clearly he is the best free agent signing in the history of this franchise, but all the drama each and every offseason seemingly under contract, but once a new deal, the Bengals – finally, after months of going back and forth and months of drama, said, you know what, we'll give you a raise this year. We'll pay you what your market value is, give you $30 million or whatever exactly the number was for Trey Hendrickson. Then ultimately he didn't do much this year, wasn't available. And, I don't want to speculate too much, but you can't help but wonder what things would have been like if the Bengals would have been winning some more games. Would there have been some more urgency from Trey Hendrickson to get back out there on the field kind of late when he got the surgery? If he got it immediately, maybe a return was possible. I don't know all those details, but it was a little odd, right? Little odd. And, look, he's a heck of a player. Somebody with the NFL released their top 10 free agents going into offseason, and he's a top defensive one. He should be, and he's certainly high on that list. But I don't think Cincinnati should have interest in continuing this relationship with Trey Hendrickson. I think the comments from Zach were interesting. Oh, there's always a path. Okay, I mean, true. Is he going to come out a day after the season ends and be like, yeah, he's done. He's done here. We appreciate him. We love him, but he's not coming back? No. So I sort of get the comments from Zach Taylor, but at the same time, there's always a path is a little bit different than how I anticipated Zach to phrase certainly the answer to that question. But Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, he came out saying, it feels like the relationship between the Cincinnati Bengals and Trey Hendrickson has kind of run its course here at this point. As I mentioned, all the drama off the field, right, with the contract, wanting more money. And the production certainly is there when he's healthy. But this year, when you look at his production when he was out there, it wasn't significant enough, certainly not close to what the amount of money Cincinnati was paying him here at this point. So he's going to sign a contract somewhere else. He's still going to be able to get a big-time deal. I think the Bengals certainly are worried about age. They were right, by the way. The Cincinnati Bengals have been wrong about a lot of things here recently. Well, they pretty much nailed the Trey Hendrickson thing. They didn't want to commit to him long-term. Why? Because he was an older player, and they were worried about him getting hurt. What happened this year? He got hurt. Now, they made the decision, Duke Tobin, the front office and company, saying, you know what, let's go all in on a world championship this year. Let's bring back our best defensive player. Let's bring back our closer. Let's make him happy and give him what he kind of deserves as far as his market value. They did that, and it kind of, I don't want to say it blew up in their face because I think it looks a heck of a lot different if Joe Burrow was able to play the entirety of the year, but it didn't work out. And I can respect the Bengals for taking the swing. I can respect the Bengals for standing pat and not caving in and saying, yeah, we'll give you a 3-year deal. Right? I mean, if Trey Hendrickson had this season that he had, the injury that he had, and still was, going to make close to $40 million next year, we would all be like, oh, goodness, we're in a world of trouble. And if the defense was still as bad, it's like, well, we're paying this guy all this money, and we don't have enough resources to go get some other players defensively here at this point. So the Bengals have a lot of cap space to work with, assuming that Trey Hendrickson isn't going to come back And, yeah, they could bring Trey back and pay him a lot of money, but you can get 3 starters, right, for the salary that you would pay Trey Hendrickson. Now, do you trust the organization to find the right ones? That's a totally different conversation. But at this point, I'm pretty convicted that they should move off of Trey Hendrickson. Again, for him, the franchise tag is in play here. They did a void year last year, so the number isn't as steep. But Trey Hendrickson sitting there, he's like, yeah, I'm not worried about the tag. He said that coming into the offseason, right? Because they gave him his money for last year, 2025, and then if they tag him, they're giving him a ton of money for 2026. And at the end of the day, he probably was looking for like a 3-year deal, right? So he's like, well, I ended up getting what I wanted if ultimately the Cincinnati Bengals tag him. But I don't anticipate that happening. I think you move on. I think you let him go somewhere else in free agency. Somebody's going to overpay for him. I think we're going to see that. And, if it's the wrong team, if he goes to a bad team and makes a ton of money, I mean, good for him. He makes a bunch of money, but he's not going to be able to be that big of a difference maker. Now, if he goes to a contender and can potentially be that last piece to their puzzle, I think you add him. But Cincinnati, here at this point, they've got a heck of a lot of issues, and they need to dedicate all of their resources to trying to fix those issues. And I've been on this about Joseph Osai there as well. He's another guy that I would move off of. I would have moved off him last year. He had the best year of his career, no doubt. Missed the last few games of the season due to some injury, and I think that certainly hurt him a little bit for as far as his contract value goes going forward. But he's going to get a sizable deal. And it's funny, when you look at these free agents on the defensive side of the ball, and Reed and I were talking about this yesterday, there's a reason why you don't have a laundry list of elite players that hit free agency. Because if you draft a player that is an elite football player, you pay him or you trade him for a bunch of draft picks. You don't let him hit free agency, right? You're looking at all these top-of-the-line free agents, and this Bengals defense, as we know, is putrid, and you're going, well, Trey Hendrickson, he's on that list. All right, well, Joseph Osai, he's also on that list. I mean, 2 of the most highly coveted pass rushers in free agency this year will be Trey Hendrickson and Joseph Osai. That's why some of us are a little bit worried, like, oh, what if Cincinnati looks at the free agency landscape and goes, well, there's nobody, no better names than Joseph Osai. Let's bring him back. I think that would be a significant mistake. And you can even throw Cam Taylor-Britt onto that list there as well. Cam Taylor-Britt, as a rookie, was like, oh, my God, this guy's great. Right, he's got ball skills. He's a physical guy, but he's gotten benched several times throughout his career. Clearly doesn't know what he's doing off the field. He's in jail right now. So, I don't think that is necessarily why the Bengals are going to move off him. I was ready to move off him anyway, just from a football perspective. But if you're going to add this immaturity to it, and look, we don't have to sit here and act like Cam Taylor-Britt is the worst guy of all time for doing what he did. I don't think we have to do that. But I also think it's fair to say it's pretty immature. Pretty immature. You're going to be reckless driving around Paycor Stadium after a ball game, and it's going to cause you to go to jail for 5 days. That's just immature, and that can't be happening if you're a professional football player and want to be a foundational piece of an organization. For example, let's say Cam Taylor-Britt didn't get hurt this year. Let's say, because he was a starter coming into the year. Let's say he didn't get benched at all this year, and let's say, you remove either Dax or DJ. Both those guys had good years, but let's say one of those guys wasn't in the equation, and it was, for example, just DJ Turner and Cam Taylor-Britt, and they both were balling. And they're like, you know what? We're getting ready to, offer a contract to Cam Taylor-Britt. And then this happens. You would have cause for concern, right? You would have cause for concern. Now, the Bengals, throughout their organization's history, has turned a blind eye to some of that stuff in the past. We've seen that, right? Pac-Man Jones certainly had his fair share of run-ins with the law, but Pac-Man Jones, when you punted the ball to him, was fireworks, right? And they were like, all right, we're willing to work with you a little bit here, Pac-Man, because when they punt the football to you, it's good things for our football team. Well, that wasn't really the case for a guy like Cam Taylor-Britt, right? As he, of course, really struggled this past year, struggled with the injury there as well. Very interesting, by the way, that he's on the injury report for a hamstring injury the week after the incident happened after the Jaguar game, and then he comes back after that. So the timeline is a little bit awkward there, certainly for Cam Taylor-Britt, but he's currently in jail right now. It's not a good look for him, certainly, not a good look for the organization, but from a football perspective, I definitely think the Bengals were in a spot where they were ready to go in a different direction there. All right. It is time to talk some Cincinnati Reds baseball. We have a guest waiting for us. He is standing by. He is waiting in the wings. And it is my pleasure to introduce longtime Reds broadcaster Chris Welsh. Chris, how's it going, man?
It's going great. We're just, a month or so away from pitchers and catchers reporting. So, once you get to the first of the year, you start thinking about baseball in a big way. Obviously, once you get the football playoffs and college all taken care of. But I'm thinking about baseball primarily, to be honest with you.
Me too, Chris. How's the golf game, by the way? You playing golf wherever you're at right now?
I think I peaked a few years ago, and I'm going downhill. There's no question about that. I don't think there's any way to prevent that, but I'm having a good time. It's a social game now more than it is competitive. Although I practice enough, you'd think that I'm still trying to grind it out. I find that as, I think hitting balls and practicing is therapy. It's better than a lot of other bad habits you can have.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. Well, we appreciate the heck out of you making some time for us here on a Wednesday. And let's jump right in. Let's talk about the Cincinnati Reds here on the show. It seems like they're kind of prioritizing a deep rotation, right? They have a great rotation. That wasn't an issue for Cincinnati last year when you're talking about Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Abbott, and certainly Brady Singer as well. Do you think that's the right decision for them to kind of prioritize that? And is there a world, in your opinion, where one of those guys isn't on the roster come opening day?
Well, take a look at what has happened here with the Reds and their draft picks over the last few years. Every time they've had a chance to pick high in the draft, and they've had a lot of chances, they've gone with primarily pitching. Pitching, I think, right now is a lot easier to project out of college and high school to the major leagues than hitting is. I mean, you can get the best hitter in college baseball, and he may never get out of Double-A, but chances are if you get the best pitcher or one of the top 5 pitchers in all of college, you're going to be able to – he's already got big league stuff. I mean, he could probably go right from a big-time program right into the major league somewhere in your bullpen just based on stuff because that's where it's all headed right now. So I think that's where they've gone. I think they have to build a team around run prevention. That starts with pitching. Then it starts with defense from there and scratch out those 3-2 wins.
Andrew Abbott might be my favorite player to watch on this team. I absolutely love it. His competitive spirit, and he just knows how to pitch. He's not going to blow you away with the fastball, but he knows what he's doing, and he can locate really, really well. And seemingly he doesn't get the credit that, in my opinion, he deserves. What, in your opinion, makes him so good?
Well, you would have loved Tom Browning, too, because they come out of the same mold. They're bulldogs. They're quiet. They don't brag about themselves. They don't tell you, it's all about the process or anything like that. They're guys that just go out and get it done. And Abbott realizes what he's good at. And what he's good at is throwing that high fastball that has good backspin. And it kind of stays right there, up and away to right-handers. They don't see it very well. It sneaks up on them. And he's gotten a lot better over the last few years under the tutelage of Derek Johnson to add a couple of other things. His breaking ball has gotten a lot better. He's thrown a little bit of a sweeping breaking ball, which, back in old-fashioned language is more of a slow curveball. And he's also been able to locate his changeup. So I think, the main asset for Abbott is the fact that he keeps things really simple. He's not trying to put numbers on the on the analyst board as far as backspin and spin rate and things like that. He's just getting it done, and I think that's one reason why you like him, why I like him, and it's another reason why he doesn't get a lot of fanfare because he doesn't rank among the top in baseball in any of these categories that people are really watching nowadays. Not in velocity, not in spin rate, not in strikeout rate, not in missed bats, although he does excel quite a bit in soft contact. But he doesn't do the things that really get you fired up if you're a fantasy player. And I think that's one reason why he's a little bit underrated, not in my book, but not in your book, but in a lot of people's minds.
A couple weeks ago, the Reds added a lefty reliever. Caleb Ferguson certainly needed to add a left-handed pitcher to the bullpen. What can you tell us about him?
I don't really know a lot about Caleb except what I've seen him, pitching, and I like him. I think the Reds need left-handers. I think if you look at what the free agent market has been so far, all the good relievers were, other than like Kyle Schwarber and so on, were the players that went first. So I think the teams now recognize how important it is to have relievers. Even though you have a 3-batter minimum, you've got to have matchups. Because there are certain lefties in the other lineup that you don't want to face with a right-handed pitcher, and I think that he'll help out quite a bit, and I think that Terry Francona is going to use him and use him a lot.
Of course, a need for the Reds going into the offseason was a closer. Didn't know exactly how they would approach that position. They opted to re-sign Emilio Pagan. Closer, it's so hard to project that because, he might have a good year one year, but how's he going to respond the following year? I just think that's so difficult, really, in all of sports. That might be the most difficult position to project and forecast. What did you make of the Reds going back with Emilio Pagan?
Well, I think what you saw in 2025 is a healthy Emilio Pagan. And he added to his fastball. He threw his fastball more effectively than any other time in his major league career. You look back on 2024, he was injured. I mean, he had some problems, physical problems that really cost him velocity, movement on his fastball. He's learned, I think all this fluff about, pitching in a fly ball ballpark, like Great American is going to be terrible. I think that's the most overrated thing ever. If you make good pitches, and his good pitches are high fastballs out of the zone, yeah, he's going to give up some home runs. Everybody is nowadays. But for the most part, that splitter changeup of his is very effective, and he throws strikes. And you add to that the intangible that he brings to the table. This guy is about as good a teammate as you're going to find anywhere, and I think that can never be underestimated.
We'll talk about some position players here in a second, but I want to ask you about Tito. Tito, of course, has been around the game for a long time, and I was blown away when the Reds were able to land him. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. What was it like? I'm sure you know Tito for being around the game for so long, but covering him year one as the Reds manager, what was that like?
Well, Tito and I were teammates, so
right.
I know him very well.
Yeah.
We're going way back now to the days of the Montreal Expos. So I can tell you that I've known Tito for a long time, and he always just seemed like a guy that had a good idea of what the game was all about. He wasn't the best talent on the ball club, but he understood what he was able to do and what his teammates should be able to do, and he's kind of continued that. I think that he is very he is a lot like Dusty Baker in as much as he's really good with interpersonal relationships with the players. He tries to get guys into a situation where they can excel. He challenges some guys and he pats other guys on the back. And I think that that's the main thing that Tito does. The strategy of the game is certainly important to Tito. I don't think that he overanalyzes the X's and O's.
Right.
He believes in his players, and I think that's important because they in turn believe in him. And I think that if you have a situation where both sides are believing in each other, then you become stronger as a whole, and that's where the Reds are right now. I think that it's the delight. Now, from a media standpoint, covering him, he's been the best manager since Dusty Baker to cover. I mean, he's honest, he's transparent, he tells you the truth. They're not trying to hide stuff. They don't tell you everything that's going on behind the scenes about injuries and things that may happen off the field that really have no consequence to us. But he does give us information that we didn't normally get with other managers. A lot of other managers, and not just in the Reds, act like everything that they do is a state secret. Not realizing that other teams are analyzing the same numbers that they are. Tito understands this, and he thinks that there aren't as many secrets in baseball as there really are. And I happen to agree with that. But he's been a breath of fresh air to cover. I know that every one of our broadcasters loves to cover him, and I'm glad to see him back again.
You alluded to this a little bit, but what makes him so well respected? Because I feel like everybody in baseball, regardless of who it is, just absolutely adores him. And certainly the World Championships probably help, but any reason why he's so revered by, it seems like, everybody around the game?
His personality and his attitude and the way he treats other people, especially the little people. I think if you treat little people well, it shows you that you really have a good idea of what life is all about. And I think that that's where he is. He understands what it is to be, a guy that struggled. It was never easy for him, even though he was a top-round draft pick. He a guy that was brought up in baseball with his father. I mean, he's got stories going back to, guys like Willie Mays, for goodness sake. So it's a guy that treats people really well. And on top of that, now he's got a track record. He's won World Series. He's taken teams to the playoffs year after year. He just missed with the Reds, this year. So I think that, his best years with the Reds are yet to come.
Reds, of course, recently added some outfielders, Dane Myers and J.J. Bleday. Bleday certainly kind of in need of a bounce-back year. I think Reds probably hoping they kind of get like a 2025 Austin Hayes maybe out of J.J. Bleday. And certainly Myers, great in center field, right-handed bat, certainly helpful. Probably the backup certainly to T.J. Friedl. What did you make of those two acquisitions?
I don't know. I mean, ask me after I see him play.
That's fair.
Not even spring training either.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take the words from one of the old Bengals assistant coaches who told me once. I asked him about the number 1 draft pick that the Bengals had taken. This is 15 years ago. I said, "How's he look?" Because this is after their first practices, and he says they all look good in their underwear. And basically, that's what it looks like. I mean, these guys are looking at this opportunity with the Reds as a new way to maybe rejuvenate their career, to get a big payday somewhere, to play on a team that wins. Certainly, they're in a good situation if you're playing for Terry Francona. That certainly is obvious. But and they're going to get some playing time.
Yeah.
So that's all you can expect. I think the hardest thing now for teams and I was reading earlier today an article about why the free agent market has been so soft and so cold this year. And I think that it reminds me of a couple of things that I've been thinking all winter long. Number one is that, first of all, there wasn't a whole lot of really great players out there. And if they were, you really weren't sure what they were going to do for you down the road. The game is changing every year. Mm-hmm. It is harder and harder to hit every year. The pitching has gone from an average of 90 miles an hour when I was pitching back 40 years ago to the average is now about 96 miles an hour. 3 years from now it might be 100 miles an hour. So if you're 36 years old, your eyes didn't get any better from ages 26 to 36. Are you going to be able to hit 100 when that's an average velocity out there? So general managers are trying to predict what a player can do in the future, what the base game of baseball is going to look like in the future, and they're also trying to negotiate and figure what's going to happen in 2027 with the prospects of the CBA and disagreements between the owners and the players.
Let's talk Matt McClain for a second. I think he's a very likable kid. He hustles his butt off, which I think we all certainly can appreciate, but certainly a down year offensively for McClain last year. Was coming off the significant injury prior to that, and Tito talked earlier this offseason kind of alluding to that perhaps being an issue for Matt McClain. But it feels like if the Reds are going to take that next step this year, he's got to be a big reason why, no?
Well, first of all, likability doesn't win you pennants.
That's true.
And I think that, there are some ownerships that feel that way, but I've never thought that way. And I think Terry Francona feels the same way.
Yeah.
I do like Matt McClain. I mean, he's a hard worker. He's a guy that was extremely frustrated last year, but he's also very stubborn. Here's a guy that, he was coached and coached properly, and he was told what to do and what to work on, and the same formula gets him out every time. You throw him up and in, then you throw him down and away, and he's three strikes out, or he's dragging it back to the dugout. And I think he's got a lot of talent in there. He could be, he could be playing anywhere on the field for the Reds. That's how good a talent he is. Any position, anytime he could fill in. But he's got to be able to hit. And for Matt McClain, he just needs to figure out a way to put the bat on the ball.
Yeah.
And, you break it down in old man's terms like I do. I said, the guy needs more. He needs to play a little pepper. You ever remember the game of pepper? I don't know if you do start it out, but I can tell you that pepper is when you just play catch with a bat. Somebody's on, instead of playing catch, you have a bat, the other guy throws to you, and you're hitting ground balls and pop-ups back to him, maybe from 30 or 40 feet away. And you don't see anybody doing that anymore. Every minor league and major league field used to have a sign near the dugout that said no pepper because they didn't want players hitting the ball into the stands and hitting spectators. But it's a lost art. And I think that if Matt McClain just figures out how to put the bat on the ball, he's going to be able to be a beneficiary of a huge jump back year. And I think that we're going to see that this year. I certainly hope so because the Reds need him.
Yeah. In your opinion, do you think he didn't take well to coaching, or is that not what you're saying there at all? Was that
I think he tried.
I
think it's a hard thing to do, really.
Yeah.
It's difficult to do something that you think you're doing right.
Yeah.
And then you look at the video and you say, gee, I'm not doing this right. And then you get in a game situation where you're facing a guy that's throwing 98 miles an hour with a 92-mile-an-hour slider and then a splitter to go on top of that. And now you get down in the hole 0-1, and the first thing you think is, uh-oh. And all the things that you've been coached all week long go out the window because you're just trying to survive the at-bat. So you fall into the same, bad habits. You step into the bucket, you drop your back shoulder, you don't catch up to the pitches that you're used to catching up to. And again, I'm going to remind you, it is harder now to hit than it ever has been in the history of baseball. And I think that he's caught in that situation where he's got to come in with some habits that are going to keep him together during tough at-bats.
Reds broadcaster Chris Welsh joining us for a couple more minutes here on the show. Sal Stewart could potentially be a big year for him. He's only, I believe, 22 years of age. You saw him get brought up late in the year last year. I think getting his bat in the lineup certainly beneficial in the Dodgers series in the playoffs, but there's some questions about, okay, where are you going to put him defensively? What do you make of Sal Stewart coming into this year? Obviously, sky-high expectations for him.
Guy can hit.
Yeah.
The guy can hit.
Yeah.
The guy can hit. I mean, period. He's a legitimate hitter. He's a guy that hits it right out of the catcher's mitt, or he hits it out in front of home plate. You know, if you want to hit home runs, you got to get it out in front of home plate and elevate the baseball, and he's going to do that a lot. He's got great hand-eye coordination. I think that he's going to get better and better as a major league player because he's going to understand what being in the big leagues is all about. Here's a guy that's been a superstar every team he's been on. And, you can get into some bad habits defensively. You can get lackadaisical in areas that don't include hitting. You know, Jesse Winker comes to mind as a guy like that who could always hit, but he never really figured out a way to play defense and be tough everywhere else. And here's an opportunity now for Terry Francona to kind of mold Sal Stewart into a player that is more complete. Right now, he's a really good hitter. He's got some potential as a fielder, but he's got some work to do. And I think that offensively, he's going to be a middle of lineup guy. I don't know if he's going to start out the season that way, but he certainly is a threat. And if I'm pitching against the Reds, he's a guy that I'm always keeping an eye on because he can do some damage.
To me, the DH position is interesting. Obviously, Gavin Lux got a lot of work there last year, but he doesn't really feel like a DH, right? He's a fine professional ball player, but not your prototypical DH. It feels like ever since the DH became a thing here in the big leagues, the Reds really haven't had that guy that they always plug in that spot. And you look across the league at other teams, they certainly do. Do you wish they, handled that position a little bit differently, or is it just kind of tough to do that when you're a small market team, I guess?
Well, when you're not spending money, you don't go out and get a guy like, who was the biggest free agent signing other than Dylan Cease this year? Kyle Schwarber.
Right.
What does he do? He's
DH,
a DH.
yeah.
Where did he go? He went back to a large market team.
Right.
So I think that if you have a payroll that is, 20th or lower in the major leagues, you don't have money for a DH. You're going to take a guy who doesn't fit well in the field and you're going to put him in the DH spot, or you're going to rotate that spot. It's going to be a platoon situation where you've got lefty righties and so on against certain matchups. So I think that's going to be the case for the most part with not just the Reds, but a lot of teams out there that don't have a real DH. I'm not so sure that it's great to have a real DH. Okay. I would certainly be a little bit don't get me wrong. I'd like to have Kyle Schwarber DH for the Reds, okay?
Yeah.
But I can tell you that I wouldn't want to take a secondary offensive player and just sign him just because he's going to be DH.
Yeah.
Jamer Candelario comes to mind, okay? You can't have that kind of player on your roster that limits your ability to move pieces in and out. And I think that Terry Francona, as a manager, likes to move pieces around defensively, offensively, up and down and in the lineup. And I think that you do that on basis of matchups. And not only starting pitching matchups, but bullpen matchups as well. And I think that sometimes getting a DH, unless he's a solid superstar caliber player, limits that a lot.
You mentioned Schwarber several times. Did you allow yourself to get a little excited about him potentially coming here, or did you know all along that it probably wasn't going to happen? I thought the offer was more than fair.
I mean, anybody who thought that he was going to sign anywhere but Philadelphia needs to get checked at the door, because it was all about emotion. I mean, he even told the Reds, it doesn't matter how much you're going to offer me. I'm going back to the Phillies. The Phillies are made to win right now. He loves it there. They love him there. This hometown thing. I believe Schwarber loves Cincinnati, and he loves being here when he plays here and so on. He loves being adored by the fans here, but he's adored by the fans in Philadelphia, and they're a step away from being in the World Series. So I just don't understand why everybody got so excited about nothing.
That's fair. Do you anticipate any more moves from Cincinnati throughout the rest of this offseason, or you think this is pretty much what we're looking at right now? Maybe a few more bullpen arms, perhaps? What do you think?
Well, I think that they're going to try to bolster their bullpen a little bit more, obviously. I think they may want to try to get a hitter of some kind. But, the first phase of free agency is over. And now
Right.
I think the next one starts now. I think we're in arbitration week or coming up now, where a lot of teams are worrying about their arbitration cases and so on. I think the Reds are reluctant to trade. I mean, the Reds aren't going to sign anybody huge, okay? At least I don't think that they are. I think that they, like a lot of other teams out there, are aware of what the labor issue might happen at the end of 2026 season. So I think a lot of teams are pulling their cards back off the table, and if they can get somebody cheap, they'll do it. Remember, though, over the last few years, a lot of the really good free agents didn't sign until after spring training has begun, or even at the very end and the beginning of the season.
Right.
So there's no urgency for any team right now to go out and overpay for everybody. They think that maybe the price will drop if you wait, and we'll see if that happens or not. I don't really have a great confidence that the Reds are going to go out and spend another a couple $100 million on players. I'm not sure that there are players out there that are worth that, to be honest with you. I kind of like the way they are. I kind of like that if they did make a move, that they would do it with some trades. I think they've got some valuable trading pieces that they could get in return. But again, I think a general manager's worst nightmare is trading somebody and then the thing flip-flops on you. And then you got to explain that to the owner 2 years from now. Is this why you traded this guy? He's now the MVP of the league. Right. And the guy you got in return, you just released. So nobody wants to do that, and I think the Reds are in that bucket.
Any prospects you got your eye on that could potentially surprise some people and make a run at the roster for opening day? I know Rhett Lauder is a popular name a lot of people are throwing around, but any of the young guys that could really make a strong impression come spring training?
The problem with me talking about prospects like that is that I haven't seen them play personally. So,
yeah, that's fair.
I read about them. So if I give you something on a prospect, I'm just regurgitating what somebody wrote. And I don't feel comfortable doing that. I think that ask me, after 3 weeks in spring training, I'm heading over to the complex here today in Arizona. Yeah. They've got a minor league camp going on, and I'm going to go over and take a look at what I see over there. But again, it's January. Don't even ask me in February, and don't ask me in the beginning of March. I do like to talk to the managers of the different levels, the AA and AAA managers, to find, hey, give me the real scoop on this guy. That gives me a lot better feel for reading something that I may see in Baseball America.
No doubt. We're about 20 minutes in. I haven't said Elly De La Cruz's name yet, which is a little crazy. But what do you make of him? What does he need to do to make that next step? Because clearly all the tools are there. Some people are too hard on the kid, I think. I think the ceiling there is no ceiling for Elly. What does he need to do to take that next step and really become a dominant player?
Elly's had 2 different infield coaches in the last 2 seasons. And I think that he just needs some consistency. I think that he needs to know that the organization believes in him and that they're going to stick with him. And here's a guy that had a ton of errors last year.
Yep.
I think part of that is inexperience. Part of that is the fact that he's almost 6 feet 7 inches tall and that it's a difficult position to play. Part of it is maybe he's hearing whispers that people in the organization are thinking about moving him into center field, and he probably doesn't like that. So I think there's a lot of different things going on with Elly, but I think that you got to keep in mind that he's still a very young player, that he hasn't had the repetitions that, that he's going to have, 2 or 3 years from now. And he's certainly not the kind of guy with the talent that he's got, which is off the charts, to ever give up on. He's a great kid. He comes out early. He loves the game. He loves his teammates. I can't say enough good things about Elly De La Cruz. But I think the level of expectations that have been placed on Elly were way too high. This is a really hard game to play. And, he's a guy that has had to learn how to handle failure a little bit because the expectations were really high. Sure. And then his performance was not so high. And then the other thing is, I don't think it's really fair for him to be the man in the middle of the order when he's 22 or 23 years old, because it just doesn't happen. So I think that if the Reds are able to get that lineup to the point where he's not the only threat in the lineup, then you're going to have a lot better Elly De La Cruz, where he can relax and play a little bit, because it's a mental game. You can see Elly last year, taking the first pitch for strike one and then chasing 2 pitches out of the zone. And then finally they say, hey, you got to be more aggressive on strike one. And then he lead the league in ground balls on the first pitch put into play. Right. So there's a lot of things that go into hitting that I don't know about, but I can tell you that it's very difficult to do. I think Ellie's going to be fine. I don't know if he's ever going to be a superstar hitter because the 6'7" strike zone is an awful big zone to cover, especially when you're facing pitchers throwing 100 miles an hour.
No doubt. Do you have a take on the World Baseball Classic stuff? I know there's been some discourse about him playing, him not playing. Gordon Wittenmeyer came on here and said he anticipates him playing. Do you have an opinion there, or you don't really care?
I like that. I like that.
Okay.
I mean, I think people that say, oh, gee, you know, we're going to keep him from getting injured. Well, I mean, you can step off a curb and slip on ice and get injured.
No doubt.
I mean, I'd rather see the kid play. I'd rather see him show his emotion and his love for baseball. I love the patriotism for every country out there that is playing. I just love the competition, and I think it's great. I hope he plays. I hope he does well, and I hope that it's a good exhibit to watch because I enjoy every game that I can get to see.
Last one for you, Chris. I grew up watching you and George Grand, and you guys were awesome. What is your favorite? Putting you on the spot here. What is your favorite George Grand story? You got one for me?
Well, I'll tell you what, George Grand was, you know, he was the first ever Sports Center host on ESPN.
Yep.
So when I was in college and just got out of college back in the late 70s, that's when ESPN came on. 1979, I think, was the first year. So we were loving, of course, ESPN because we'd never seen anything like it. And so George was the first reason that I learned how to pirate cable. I learned how to cut a cable, put a splicer in, and run it into our apartment, even though we couldn't afford to have it. Our neighbor could, so we shared his feed, right? Yeah. You can't do that stuff anymore. But what George was really great at, when I first started with George, we did over-the-air television on Channel 5 in Cincinnati, WLWT, and we would always try to fill the gap between the end of the game and the top of the hour, which would be 11 o'clock. Mm-hmm. So we would do the game. Say the game would end at 10:50. We'd have 10 minutes to go, and we'd have to fill the game with a recap. George could fill the game from his scorecard, play by play, almost pitch by pitch. And if you needed 9 minutes and 32 seconds, he would give you 9 minutes 31 and a half seconds. That's all from Great American Ballpark, or that's all from the Synergy Field, and that would be up. And it was amazing the timer that George Grand had in his head. Oh. He never did a second take. He always did a first take. You know, his teases, a lot of the things that happen in baseball broadcasting, I'll tell you a real quick story, is that you have this stand-up tease, right, where they show a lot of different plays going on to try to get the person, hey, tonight the Milwaukee Brewers are in town, and they show some highlights of Christian Yelich and so on, and one after another, maybe some home runs, what the Reds hit the night before. And a lot of guys take that tease and they write it out verbatim. I mean, It's like using a teleprompter, one thing after another. George would tell the producer, show me the clip one time. And he'd show you this 30-second tease clip. And George would say, okay, I got it. And the next thing you know, George is hitting everything right on the number. I mean, every time there's a great play defensively or a great play by Ellie De La Cruz, I mean, right on the number. It was amazing day after day, and I just stood there amazed. And, you know, guys like that, guys like George Grand and Marty Brenneman, and the really great announcers of our time, they're like great players. I mean, they're in a league all by themselves, and I've always thought that George is in a league by himself, and I love the guy.
Absolutely. Heck of a story. He is an unbelievable broadcaster, no doubt. Lastly, Chris, tell us a little bit about your website, Baseball Rules Academy. I know our director of media, Nick Kirby, helps you out a little bit with that. Tell us about the website.
Well, thanks for asking. You know, I came up with a new product this year. It's a rules education course. So it's an online video-based course about the rules of baseball. I've taken the kind of rules that you don't learn in the rule book, and I've taken a lot of MLB plays, crazy plays that you may not know the answer to, and I put them in video form. I've got quizzes. I've got rule sets for Little League, the same rule. For instance, if it's infield fly rule, I've got a rule set for Little League, high school, college, and of course the OBR, which is major leagues. Is 140 lessons in there and 9 different modules. We're adding to it all the time. Major league teams are really embracing it to show it to their players. You know, legitimate coaches that want to be a little bit up on the rules are able to learn it very easily, and fans too. I mean, if you're a serious fan of baseball, maybe you can win a bar bet or two by posing a question at the bar about the rules of baseball. You'll find it there. It's baseballrulesacademy.com, and get you signed up. The other thing we did, we cut the price in half. So we went from only having one part of our website at $60 a year down to $30 a year for both things. I'm just trying to get as many people out there to understand the rules of baseball. But thanks for asking.
Of course, no problem. We will make sure we check that out. But, Chris, thank you so much for making some time here at the beginning of January. I appreciate you. Would love to do it again. And hit them straight, my friend, all right?
All right. Hit them straight and don't three-putt too much. Great to see you. Thank you very much. And good luck to you in your career.
I appreciate you. See you, Chris. All right, Chris Welsh, Cincinnati Reds broadcaster. He's been at it for a long time, 30-plus years. He's unbelievable. So good. He's been doing it for so long. And, I grew up watching him. He probably doesn't like hearing me say that. Probably makes him feel a little bit old. It's not what I was trying to do there at all. But I grew up listening to Chris Welsh, George Grand. Those guys were unbelievable, and certainly very fired up that Chris is going to be back with the Cincinnati Reds this coming year. And hopefully, it stinks we're not talking about the Bengals postseason right now, but I know we're all fired up about spring training and certainly turning the page there as it relates to that. All right, that interview will be out later on our YouTube page. Check it out. If you missed it, that's fine. Also out in podcast form as well, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's transition a little bit here to the Harbaugh news. News in the NFL yesterday, news in sports yesterday. John Harbaugh is not going to be the Ravens coach next year. And let's be very clear here. This is great news for the Cincinnati Bengals, right? Anytime something like this happens in your division, when a legendary coach, you can sit here and tell me maybe he's a little overrated. That's fine. He's a top 5 coach in the NFL, top 7 at worst coach in the National Football League. He's been at it for a long time. The Ravens, by the way, since they became the Ravens and no longer the Baltimore Colts, only have had 3 coaches. Billick before him, and I'm not quite sure who the first one was. But pretty unprecedented for them to make a move like this after winning all the games in which he won. And it's like, if you have like a stinker of a year, for example, Cincinnati this year, stinker of a year. You don't really get that in Baltimore. You thought maybe it was trending in that direction. Would they start 1-5, something horrible, and all of a sudden they have a game-winning field goal opportunity to win the division and go to the playoffs. Didn't go in. He gets fired. But just pretty amazing that they made the switch here. And I don't want to come off and say that, if you win enough games, you should never get fired, right? Doug Peterson in Philadelphia, for example, he wins the Super Bowl a couple years later, he's out. I don't think that necessarily was the wrong decision at all from Philadelphia. Clearly, Howie Roseman made the right one, and last year they win the Super Bowl with a guy that a lot of us don't really think is a great head coach in Nick Sirianni. But Harbaugh, to me, in the relationship and the rapport, in my opinion, that he had with Lamar Jackson was incredible. And I feel like when you're in a spot like Baltimore was in, Cincinnati kind of finds himself in this spot too, where you have a franchise quarterback. There's 32 teams in the NFL. There's only a handful of teams that say, you know what? We love our quarterback. We're going to go to war with our quarterback. He's going to be our guy for several years. There's only a handful of teams that have that, really. And Baltimore is one of those teams. And you want to break that up, it's a risk. Now, it could jumpstart their offense. Lamar could play even better than he's played in his career, which I find that very hard to believe. And they could be a contender next year. There's no reason that they have to necessarily take a step in the wrong direction. But when you remove a guy that is great at his job, John Harbaugh, make no mistake, great at his job, there's a lot of risk there. And it's so kind of unprecedented because immediately, we've been talking about guys like Robert Saleh, Mike McCarthy, fine head coaches. Saleh, I think, got the short end of the stick in New York. McCarthy wins games, right? People don't like him, but he wins. He wins enough. He should be a head coach in this league. Absolutely. But Harbaugh becomes available, and now immediately he is the top target for any team that has an opening here at this point in the National Football League. Adam Schefter made the report that a certain number of teams were calling about Harbaugh, and that was more than the amount of openings there are here at this point. That means teams that don't have an opening, we're like, oh, yeah, what's Harbaugh doing? If we could land him, we'll move off the guy we currently have right now. So not only do you have that, but also the reverse. Baltimore instantly becomes the most intriguing option if you're a head coach candidate here at this point, Ben Johnson last year, if this was last year and then Baltimore comes open, he's going to Baltimore, right? I get, Williams, rookie deal, whatever. No. All that stability that you have, all the winning that they have. We talk about these organizations. Lots of them are dumpster fires. We're involved with one here at Cincinnati. Luckily, they have the quarterback, so they have a chance. But the Baltimore Ravens are just a well-oiled machine. You could certainly make the argument they've underachieved. They've had multiple opportunities to add another Lombardi trophy. And the fact they haven't been back in that game since Joe Flacco was in his early years hoisting that trophy is not good for Baltimore. But each and every year, they have a competitive team. They're a dangerous team. We talk about them as being a perennial Super Bowl contender each and every year. And they're a problem in the division as well. And you're never surprised if they win the division. It's a well-oiled machine there, right? Philadelphia, well-oiled machine. There's only a hand. Green Bay, well-oiled machine. You put Baltimore in that same category as well. So that is a very intriguing option, right? And again, this cycle, there isn't, some crazy names. Like, you're going to fire John Harbaugh. Like, what if McCarthy goes to Baltimore? Like, that's your upgrade? Like, that's what you do? You go to get Mike McCarthy and get rid of John Harbaugh? Like, to me, that's crazy. To me, it's absolutely crazy. I've been clear about this. I think that this is a mistake for the Baltimore Ravens. We'll see if it costs them or not, right? We'll see if Lamar is able to overcome it. Again, reportedly, Todd Monken, the offense coordinator, play caller for Baltimore, they struggled a little bit offensively. It was funny, when he took over, they were great offensively and then kind of has declined a little bit since then. But apparently ownership, front office was like, yeah, we need to make a change there offensively, John. We need to move off Todd Monken. And allegedly, John was like, you know what, I'm not doing that. I'm keeping him. And apparently that was the final straw that resulted in him being removed. But instantly becomes the best head coach target across the league. And instantly the Ravens' job becomes a highly coveted job. And there's a world here. There is a world here. So Cincinnati, of course, I try to tie this in from a Bengals perspective. Not having to play Harbaugh twice is huge. Still got to play Lamar, of course. But there's not going to be a coach that you insert there that's going to strike fear in you at all if you're the Bengals. I don't care who it is. It's not going to happen, right? So not only do you have that, the Browns' job's open. They're a disaster. I don't think you're ever worried about Cleveland, despite the fact, of course, they beat you the final week of the year. But if things get ugly at home, Acrisure Stadium, Monday Night Football, if C.J. Stroud and the boys come in there, hang some points on that defense, and that unbelievable Houston defense holds Rodgers and company to 9-10 points, and it gets ugly early, could Tomlin be out? Reed was talking about, he was all over this, on off the bench, like, when things were going really bad for the Bengals, like, hey, are all four of these guys going to get fired? And I sat here and I was like, well, Zach's not getting fired, right? The Bengals aren't going to make that decision. Team didn't quit on him. That was the one thing that, would have made him get fired, right? This is the one thing. And I was shocked. Reed was all over this. Credit to him. He was like, I think there's a world here. I think there's a world here where Harbaugh gets fired in Baltimore. And I was like, no way. Ain't no way. But I was wrong. I was wrong. So now that that's happened, what if Tomlin loses to Houston? They're underdogs at home. It's a great Houston Texan defense. They get DK Metcalf back, which is helpful certainly for them. Stefanski already fired. Like, is there a world where 3 of the 4 of these guys get fired? And from a Bengals perspective, that's awesome, right? If you got 3 first-year head coaches or first year with that team head coaches that you're dealing with, and you have a third-place schedule, I know I sound a little bit like Zach Taylor here trying to turn the page to next year while we're just all ticked off about what happened to end this season. But I do think it is very noteworthy. This is great for the Cincinnati Bengals. Make no mistake, this is great news for the Cincinnati Bengals that they don't have to deal with John Harbaugh in this division anymore. And it'll be fascinating to see how Baltimore handles this. The Minter stuff, people view Jesse Minter, maybe he's that next up-and-coming guy. If you remember, it's very aligned with how the Harbaughs operate. Like, a lot of those Michigan guys are Ravens guys and vice versa, now Chargers guys, right? And, McDonald, he was in Baltimore. He had ties to Michigan there as well. And look at him, superstar. Mike McDonald's a superstar in Seattle. Could Jesse Minter be that next guy? I do think it's a little, I don't know if awkward's the right word, but it's like, well, you fired him, and then you're just going to hire the guy that kind of learned from the Harbaughs. Like, is that really going to give you enough change? I don't know. I have my I'm a little bit hesitant to say that Jesse Minter is going to be a great NFL coach. I'm not going to act like I'm very familiar with it, but, he's done some nice things for Los Angeles. Also when he took over as the DC, like it was really the only place he could go was up. In my opinion, I didn't think he really had a lot of different places he could have gone because of, the mess that Brandon Staley left. Like, it didn't get much worse than that. So credit to him for cleaning that up. Is he a potential candidate for them? Do they want to go with the defensive-minded guy? Or are they going to bring in an offensive guru? But again, this isn't a cycle. There's no Mike Vrabel in this cycle. There's no Ben Johnson in this cycle. Shoot, there's no Liam Cohen in this cycle either. We're talking about guys like Robert Saleh. Talking about guys like Mike McCarthy. Shoot, Lou Anarumo, our guy, Lou Dini. He's interviewed for several of these jobs as well. So it'll be very interesting to see how Baltimore approaches this, how they attack this, and go from there. DeCosta's still in place, their GM. That to me is interesting. I get on these teams for the half in, half out. I'm okay with them being half in, half out here. I mean, DeCosta's done great work, but it felt like they were a pairing, the two of those guys, Harbaugh and DeCosta, that were going to kind of roll things out, through the rest of, his career. And it was going to, you would think they would have won a Super Bowl, right? And, Harbaugh talked about it in his statement that he was hoping that one day he would just kind of retire with Baltimore, probably hoist another Lombardi trophy. And if he had one more, if he had two, like, you're talking Hall of Fame. You're talking Hall of Fame. But now there's going to be a competitive fire burning really deep within John Harbaugh. And, look, he's a nice guy. Says the right things. He's a very religious guy. I respect the heck out of him. But make no mistake, there's a psycho competitor that lives deep within him, and he's going to be coming, right? Whether it be in New York, whether it be in Vegas. Like, it's hard to imagine. Like, where does he go? Where does he go? Like, no way he goes to Cleveland, right? I don't think he's going to Cleveland. Right? Who would want to go to Cleveland, right? I also don't see him going to Tennessee. Like, it's John Harbaugh. He's not going to Tennessee. Raiders maybe is a little appealing because the first overall pick, right, having an opportunity to get Mendoza and have him for several years without paying him. Maybe that's intriguing. But you also got to play your brother twice a year. Not ideal for him. You also got to play Sean Payton twice a year. And, oh, by the way, you got to play Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid twice a year there as well. If I was him, now this job's not currently open as we're doing this live here on a Wednesday, but I believe there was one more team that called than the amount of openings there were. And if I had to guess, I would say that team was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Again, maybe since we're live here, Bowles has been fired. Jason Light is a tremendous general manager. He's been doing it for a long time. He's well-respected in the industry. If I'm Harbaugh, go down to Florida, right? Kind of Tom Brady style, end of your career. Yeah, let's go down to Florida. Let's go down to that warm weather. Let's go down to the worst division in football. That's what Tom Brady did there as well. I don't think there's any shame in that, right? He's been in the league for so long. He's won a ton of games. You want to go to the AFC West and deal with your brother and deal with Sean Payton and deal with Patrick Mahomes, or you want to go hang out with New Orleans and Carolina and Atlanta. I'd be going to Tampa. Obviously, the job's not open. You have a quarterback in place. You can win a Super Bowl with Baker Mayfield. I'm not going to sit here and say he's some elite Hall of Fame guy. He's not. But if you surround him with the right pieces, in my opinion, I think he is good enough to win a Super Bowl. So keep an eye on Tampa. Keep an eye on Tampa. Again, as we're doing this, not open at this point. But I would move off Bowles. Jason Light, he's tremendous. He's not going to mess that up. I bet he's the guy that called. If I had to guess, I'd say he's the guy that called. But huge news. Great news for the Bengals. Great news for the Bengals. All right, a couple of minutes before we get out of here on today's show. Wes Miller, I mean, look. I support Zach Taylor, right? He does some things that are frustrating. But I've sat here at this very microphone on this very show, and I've defended Zach Taylor. And at some point, again, if he misses the playoffs next year, if there's something else goes horribly wrong next year, I won't be able to do that anymore. And I gave him an F on the show yesterday. Reed and I were doing final report cards. Gave him an F. He deserves an F. That's back-to-back Fs in back-to-back years for Zach Taylor, right? Any other place across the NFL, especially with Joe Burrow on your team, understand he didn't play much this year, missed half the year with injury. You're getting fired with back-to-back Fs. A little bit different here in Cincinnati. He doesn't get fired. We'll see. I can't defend Wes Miller. I can't do it. When you are as bad at the end of games as they are, that is an indictment on head coaching. An indictment on the head coach. I'm sitting there texting with buddies watching the end of the game, and it's like, okay, they came back. They hung in there. Honor Huff was going crazy. Chattanooga transfer. Unbelievable player. He's going crazy, just giving them buckets. UC hung in there. They were resilient. Celestine, he hit 5 threes in the game? He hit some shots for UC. They had a lead with a couple minutes to go. Okay, this is when you get the season a little bit back on track. Not, we're going to the Final Four, but okay, we got to win on the road in the Big 12. Would have been a huge deal. We're in prime position to do it, and they just melted. They completely melted, similar to what they did against Houston and similar to what they've always done in the Wes Miller era. Some of the shots those boys were taking, Bob Miller's your best player. Why in the biggest moment of the game is he taking a step-back three? It's not in his bag. Are we serious? Celestine, he had made shots throughout the game. Great. You're going to run down a coffin corner on the baseline and chuck up a prayer with a guy in your face? Run some offense. What are you doing? Right? I don't understand. I do not understand what Wes Miller is doing from a schematics perspective. And then he joins our friends after the game over at 700 WLW, Dan Horde, Terry Nelson. Terry Nelson, friend of the show. Hope to have Dan on soon. And Dan hadn't even gotten into his question. And Wes just started collapsing, falling apart at the seams, crashing out, as the kids say. And it's not good. We played the soundbite on Off the Bench. It's on our Twitter page, Chatterbox Sports. We posted it. It was almost hard to believe. Like, I heard it at first. I'm like, is this AI? Like, this, oh, my goodness, he actually did this. Dan hadn't even, like, it's one thing if he gets asked a question that angers him or gets him fired up or what have you. They hadn't even gotten going. And he's sitting here talking about all the noise. I don't care about the noise. I don't care about the noise. And Lance McAllister tweeted this. I don't know of a coach, certainly not in this town, that has ever had the rabbit ears of a guy like Wes Miller. If you're a coach at a university, a prominent university, or certainly a professional team, again, this is something Zach does great. Sky's falling in Cincinnati or putting up billboards. He's like, yeah, we block it out. I don't have enough time for that. I can't give that any of my attention. And you just move on. Right? That's another thing. Zach handles all this crap so well, and Wes just does not. You cannot be rabbit-eared and listening to what people are saying online or what the media is saying if you're Wes Miller. And he keeps saying, keep betting against us. That's exactly what we're all going to do. We've been doing it for years. It's worked. If you're a Bearcat fan, why would you not? There's no reason to believe that he can get this thing on the right track. I'm sorry, there's not. And when he took the job, I got on board. I'm easy to get on board. Like, you're going to hire him here in this city, I'll give you a chance. It looked a heck of a lot better than Brennan, right? The previous guys, okay, this guy's got a little bit of moxie. He's walking around with some confidence. He's got some J's on the sideline. Okay. He's recruiting his butt off a little bit here. But it ain't working out. It absolutely isn't working out. I don't know if there's a way he can save his job. But also the other conversation, and I forgot about this. I'm, reading this stuff last night after the game. He got an extension right after losing to Xavier. He comes in year one. It's year one. I think, cut him some slack. Didn't win a ton of games. Wasn't a complete disaster. Year two, he loses to Xavier again. And give him an extension. How in the world could you give him an extension if you're Cunningham and these boys over at the UC Athletic Department? I don't understand. I really don't understand it. So, if he had handled it a little bit better, and I keep bringing up Zach, if he handled it a little bit more like that, I'd be willing to give him a little bit of grace here. But you can't go on there. You can't go on the radio and do that. Just collapsing. 2 games into conference play, falling apart at the seams. I don't understand it. And, I came on here a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, give him the year. Don't make a move at this time. I still probably would. They've got talent. Reed's mentioned this. They're going to pick off somebody, probably at home, but they're going to pick off one of these Big 12 teams. But if you look at what they need to do to make the tournament, which that was the expectation, it's like, if you don't make the tournament, you're getting fired. It's hard to even fathom this team sniffing the tournament at this point. Going to be in a spot where they have to win the Big 12, and we all know that ain't happening. That ain't happening. So we'll spend more time talking about the Cats going forward. In perfect position. If you didn't watch the game, it was right there for the taking. Faced adversity in the first half, came storming back, hung in there, built a lead on the road. There were some moments there where the crowd was popping for West Virginia, and then boom, UC responded in a position under 5 minutes, I think. And you look at his record when trailing under 5 minutes, it's just disgusting. Again, direct reflection on coaching. And it just whittles away. They take bad shots, show no poise, show no composure, show no sense of how to play bad. And when they fouled at the end, it's like there was a 7-second differential between shot and game clock. And I was like, okay, they're going to try to play some defense here. And then they fouled late. I it'd probably be a mistake not to foul there, and then you only have 7 seconds to work with, right? But foul early if you're going to foul instead of just bleeding the clock. It was just a disaster. End of game disaster for UC. Wes says keep betting against them. And I think all of us, unfortunately, will be doing it. We'll be doing it. But appreciate everybody hanging out with us here on a Wednesday. Heck of a show. Paul Fritchner joined off the bench. We'll get that interview out later. And then Chris Welsh, legendary Reds broadcaster, he was on our show, gave us about 30 minutes of his time. We appreciate the heck out of him. He's tremendous. He's been at it for a long time. I've watched him my whole life. I got a lot of love and appreciation for him. So pretty cool that he was able to stop by the show. Hope to do it again with him sometime. We got lots to talk about tomorrow, and we'll be back then. But until then, take care, everybody.